It all starts today. The brackets, everything, it starts today, episode 125 of The Next Best Bet. I'm Jake Higgins with Brett Levy, as always. We have 11 people signed up for our bracket challenge. Not too late to do that yet. That would be a bit.ly and then just NBB_bracket challenge. It's really simple. Brett, who you got winning so far?
I'm leaning Gonzaga, Higgins. Should I give out my final four? I don't know. Is that going to hurt me in our bracket?
Don't give it out just yet. Don't give it out just yet. I got Illinois over Gonzaga in the end. We'll see how that goes, though. Should be interesting. Before we get into our deep dive into March Madness, let's talk about how we did from last episode. There's a few picks for you and I still out to play. We did make the Syracuse long shot pick of that's a dollar bet plus 15,000. A dollar wins 150. You got to root for your team and do that absolutely. But Brett, the side we're on opposite sides of, that plays on Thursday, Drake, Wichita State. Besides that, we each got 2 wins. I got 2 losses as well, both of my NBA picks. One was only half unit, though.
Yeah, Islanders did not come through for me, Higgins. But you know who came through for me, Higgins? The Hawks. And I know you were on that Rockets side. You thought the Rockets might not want to make history. You might have been just a game too early as Christian Wood comes back a few nights later, Higgins, for the Rockets. And the Rockets 0-17 in Christian Wood's absence. So maybe he's the difference maker. Maybe you were just ahead of the trend.
We each won the pick of the pod and Levy lock as well, too. So I'm still a game back with you on that. The Rockets were close. They cut it to a point in the fourth quarter, but they couldn't get the win overall. Let's jump to Beginners Boulevard, Brett, because with March Madness, there is a lot of competition to get new signups into some of these sports books. So shop around, see what promos you like, sign up bonuses. That's what we're talking about on Beginners Boulevard. Many sports books offer these, like whether it be a price match on your first deposit up to a certain amount, risk-free betting, lots of interesting plays to try to get your money to that sports book specifically, especially this weekend, right, Brett?
Yeah, 100% Higgins. I've already seen FanDuel doing their spread the love. So, if you're not a new user, some of these opportunities exist for you too. So, definitely shop these around, Higgins. These are great opportunities to just increase your bankroll. They're free wins because the companies know that you're going to reinvest that money. But if you reinvest it wisely, Higgins, it could pay out for you.
And there is literally tons of games going on. We have 4 to start everything off on Thursday, 16 on Friday, 16 on Saturday, and that's just March Madness. I mean, you can get into the NIT, CBA. We could be here all night, Brett, but we're not going to do that. We're just talking about the dance. We're talking about what really matters, right?
We could literally be here for days talking about college basketball, Higgins. But let's just start on the Thursday game because you and we already announced last episode. I'm on I'm on Wichita State minus 1.5 versus Drake. This is the number 11 seed play-in game. But I see you're also on. I mean, I know you're on Drake, but you're also on the UCLA Michigan State 11 game, Higgins.
I am. We're going to get to that in a second, Brett, but don't be stealing my Drake pick. I heard you try to sneak right past that just because the line has flipped and Drake is now a 1.5 point favorite when Wichita State was the 1.5 point favorite when you took it. 3-point line movement. I see you trying to hop on the bandwagon. I'm not having it. That's my pick. That's my
No,
pick.
no, sir. I still think Wichita State has a good chance in that one, but all of the analytics, Higgins, would say Drake. They're one of the best teams in the country against the spread, one of the best teams record-wise in the country. So, they didn't win their conference tournament. Loyola Chicago won their conference tournament, but those are 2 really good teams. I'm going to take the bigger conference team. I'm going to take Wichita State. I think they get a different level of recruiting there. Isaac Brown's got his interim tag removed. People are doubting Wichita State. Higgins, I'm not.
Well, we shall see. I will tell you, Brett, I will hint at my bracket a little bit. I do have whoever wins this matchup beating USC in my Western bracket. I don't necessarily have them going super far. There's a lot of tough competition in that bracket, but I think they could get a first round win, maybe get into the round of 32.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a possibility as well, Higgins. And I have picked that in a few of my brackets as well. Um, I will say for UCLA, Michigan State, though, Higgins, not as confident that either of these teams can get through BYU. Although I would say if I'm BYU, I would rather see UCLA sitting there for me.
This is another scenario that I have them going more than one round, not just on their Thursday night win. I think they would win on Saturday as well. UCLA versus Michigan State is going to be one of the first big tests that we really get in terms of which conferences are actually the strongest, because a lot of this year has been almost exclusively, if not entirely, just within your own conference for some of these teams. So, what is that going to mean when they're all finally mixing together? We're going to see that some of these conferences were actually really, really strong, like we thought this year, and then maybe some were just overhyped with a lot of teams at similar type of strength that won't be as strong here. I think Pac-12 versus Big Ten here, UCLA versus Michigan State. It's going to be a very interesting matchup, but I'm just going off of who has played better more recently, and that's Michigan State. They kind of did rebound in their last 10 games, going 7-3 compared to UCLA. And so I'm going to take the Spartans -2. Remember the last time there was March Madness, Tom Izzo and the Spartans went all the way to the Final Four. So that that's pretty favorable to me. They got the experience.
Yeah, I mean, Izzo is known for winning in March, Higgins, but I think this is an interesting matchup for a variety of reasons. I think, these are two great programs that are always going to draw attention when they play against each other, but they're both very down right now. That's the reason it's a first four matchup. So, Michigan State, UCLA should be a lot of fun. Should be a lot of notoriety. I like your pick though, Higgins, because I'm with you. I think Michigan State is the better team right now.
Let's jump into the true round of 64, though, and talk about the games that really matter for everyone's brackets. And before we start talking about our actual picks, Brett, real quick, do you bet against your bracket, or do you find your bets often will align with your bracket?
I'm usually betting with my bracket. I like well, I don't want to spoil our episode, but for instance, if there's a team with injuries, right, or COVID sickness or something like that, I will probably, find the spread, find myself against on the spread against that team, and then also in my bracket against that team as well. So I guess I typically align.
I typically align too. I mean, maybe if you have a future that you can sometimes like hedge against, that's where I would bet against my bracket. But overall, like especially in the first round, I'm betting with my bracket or I'm staying away from that game on a bet typically because otherwise you're just tearing yourself apart right from the beginning, it feels like.
Right. No, I totally agree with that, Higgins. I mean, in the last episode, I put a half unit on Texas to win the tournament outright at plus 4,500. To me, that's not only this bet, but I'm basically getting that Texas Alabama game in the Sweet 16 at Texas plus 4,500, and then whatever Alabama's favored at. So I feel like that's a more fun way to bet it, a way you can kind of hedge out. I can put a little bit extra on that game to maybe make up for the juice I'll have to pay on the money line.
Yeah, so let's get into these games though, and I'm not afraid to admit that I'm taking Arkansas in a 3 versus 14 scenario. So this is a side that I see The Razorbacks should win this. They're the 3 seed, but I think that they should also maybe get a little more respect than an 8.5 point spread against Colgate, who is 14-1, but it's entirely against the Patriot League, who Lafayette, Bucknell, Lehigh. We've seen the Patriot League do things in the past, but not necessarily your always strongest or most confident conference compared to the SEC, where Arkansas fought amongst a much different SEC than you typically see, where it was down for Kentucky but almost up for everyone else, and it was some great competition.
Yeah, the SEC was a lot of fun this year, Higgins. You're right. It was a weird year for Kentucky basketball. I think Arkansas exceeded a lot of people's preseason expectations. They're a good team. But don't sleep on Colgate. Colgate's been pretty impressive this year, Higgins. I'm kind of with you. This 8.5 doesn't really seem big enough, but it was big enough to get me to stay away. So I I can't really comment. I think you're on to something. I think conference play will, be an important factor in this March Madness because you didn't have the normal out of conference games that you do in normal years.
Another thing about that game that we aren't going to see in a lot of these other picks we talk about, Brett, is the over under for Colgate, Arkansas is set at 161 right now. And that's because both of these teams average over 80 points per game. Their defenses are a little tighter than that, only allowing around 70 points per game. But are we going to see a shootout like that? I mean, some of these other games that we're going to talk about, there you see the over-unders in the 130s, 140s typically. 161's pretty up there.
161 is a high total. You were right, Higgins. These teams are gonna score, so it's just gonna be a fun game to watch. I think you're on to something. Maybe the athletes at Arkansas are just too much for Colgate because that's something I lean on. How talented is the best player on the court? Like, can he go and win you a game? Is another thing I lean on in March as well. Coaches that have been there. You mentioned Tom Izzo, so these are all things I look for when I'm betting in March Madness, Higgins. And, Eric Musselman's a great coach. He's done it at a few programs. So it's not crazy to think Arkansas could blow Colgate out of the water.
But, Brett, on Friday, you are picking a spread against a coach that has a lot of history in March Madness, aren't you?
I am. Jay Wright has a history in March Madness, Higgins. You mentioned it, a national champion. But Villanova has a kind of a checkered history because they either lose in the first weekend or they go to the Final Four, Higgins. And unfortunately for Jay Wright and the Wildcats, this year I think they're a little bit too banged up. I think Pat Kelsey and the Winthrop Eagles get to Villanova and they play the 12-5 upset roll that everyone bets on every year, Higgins. But I actually am going to take it one step further. In the 13-4 in that bracket as well, the Purdue North Texas game, taking North Texas, Higgins.
Ooh. Is that a podcast pick or is that a
Just in
bracket
my
pick?
just in my bracket, but I
Okay.
don't I don't trust Purdue. I don't trust Purdue. I'm thinking North Texas might be able to pull off that upset there. That's a bracket giveaway for you guys.
And if we have Winthrop versus North Texas in the second round, that's a bracket buster for everyone. I'd be surprised who has Winthrop North Texas in there besides Brett Levy. But that's why you should join into our bracket pool because if Brett's not right about that, then maybe you can get a little edge on him coming out the first weekend. I'll be interested to see that Winthrop. I have Villanova personally in my bracket, but there is one other Friday game I have a pick on, Brett. Utah State versus Texas Tech, and we've talked about Texas Tech a lot this year as well. And I think that they're just kind of hitting their stride a little bit better. Utah State, it's kind of a similar mind of what I was talking about with the Colgate, Arkansas. You got a Big 12 versus a Mountain West. Big 12 was pretty fun to watch this year. So Texas Tech, Mac McClung's hit some big shots already this year. Wouldn't be surprised if they can do it again. -4 for an 11 versus a 6. -4 isn't that big of a spread for me, so I'm going to go with the favorite. I'm going to take those points before more money gets onto that by Friday and potentially makes it bigger.
All right, we'll see what happens in that game, Higgins. I have no true read on that game. Utah State's a really good team. I wouldn't just overlook them, but like you said, Texas Tech battle tested in the Big 12, which is arguably the best conference in college basketball this year.
Utah State only played one game against a top 25 team this year and they lost. So Texas Tech, a little bit tougher competition this year. We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. But Brett, before we stop talking about Friday and go on to our Saturday games, we're not going to get out of here without talking about Syracuse at least a little bit. At least a little bit. And Syracuse versus San Diego State. I like Syracuse's side of the bracket personally in the Midwest. They're on the better side of the bracket, in my opinion.
Honestly, Higgins, it's one of those things where everyone's so mad that Syracuse is in the tournament that, oh, they're just in because Boeheim has a history and blah, 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 blah. Well, you know why they put us in and you're all mad? Because that's when we play well. I don't know why, but that's when our teams show up. It's when everyone's like, "Oh, what the hell is Syracuse doing in there?"
Winning.
Yeah, exactly. That's when we make our miracle Final Four run. So plus what was it? Plus 150,000 Higgins. What I don't even remember what it was. Plus 15,000. There it is. Our odds for Syracuse to win the championship. I think we're robbing the sports books, Higgins.
I agree. I'm not going to bet on the first round game. I'm going to watch that out of enjoyment now. Giving me the West Coast time frame because they're playing San Diego State, I appreciate that. The 6:40 tip-off time for me, very much appreciated to the tournament and to the commissioners. Thank you very much.
Well, that's what happens when you're a road dog. Syracuse +3 on, well, not on the road, in Indianapolis versus San Diego State as the lower seed. Normally when you see this matchup, you think the ACC school would be the higher seed, but Syracuse definitely not deserving of that this year. Although Buddy Boeheim in the ACC tournament, Higgins caught absolute fire, and I'm obviously biased, but I'm hoping it continues into the big tournament here.
It'll be interesting to see for sure. Let's talk about Saturday though, Brett, because Friday is when you're going to see the South and the Midwest play basically, and then Saturday is when you see the East and the West play. And right off the bat, we have two teams that we've talked about a lot in the past few episodes, Georgetown and Colorado. And Brett, you've liked both of these teams recently. They've been good to you. So how are you dealing with this?
Yeah, I mean, I told you, Higgins, Colorado's a team I think is built for March, well coached, and with this, upperclassman point guard and McKinley Wright, and I think Colorado -5.5. Not enough respect being given to Colorado. I think people are giving a lot of respect to Georgetown. They just won a Big East championship game, but this is the next step for this program. Georgetown. It's been a while since they've been in the NCAA tournament. Higgins. It's nice for them to be back. Their next step is to win a game. I think Colorado is a program that is looking to consistently win games in the tournament and take that step. So I think Colorado's program's a little bit ahead of where Georgetown's is. Not to say Georgetown couldn't catch up in a few years, but in this particular matchup in March 2021, Colorado -5.5. Their program's a little bit ahead of Georgetown right now.
My bracket might disagree with you.
Well, you needed 12-5. You just took the wrong one. You took Nova. No, you're supposed to take Colorado, Higgins.
I'm going to talk about a 215 though, Brett. I obviously don't think Grand Canyon's going to beat Iowa. I think Iowa's built for March, kind of like what you were saying with Colorado. I like Iowa as a team. But Grand Canyon is an interesting matchup for them right out the gate. They have a 7-footer, 270-pound senior to match up against Luca. So I think that might be to the book's favor for Grand Canyon. Plus 14 and a half. I think you can keep it within that margin. So I'm going to put a unit on that.
My hope is that you become Grand Canyon's second most famous fan because you're not going to catch Frankie Muniz, but you could be second, Higgins.
Yeah, Ashbourne Midgard. 7-footer, 270-pounder from Denmark. I'll be his biggest fan. Frankie can be the biggest fan of Grand Canyon. I'll be this guy's biggest fan.
7'2" from Denmark. Okay. Well, hey Syracuse, there's some footers in Denmark. We should start looking over there.
Absolutely. That's who I like in the West, and we're going to get back into the West in a little bit, Brett. But let's talk about the East. And I like another one of these for a similar reason. Abilene Christian against Texas. One of the things I didn't mention about Grand Canyon is they're the fifth best team at covering the spread in the country in all of the NCAA this year. Pretty nice when you're playing against a Texas team that is, or when they're playing against an Iowa team that hasn't been all fantastic against the spread. They're just over 500. Similarly, Abilene Christian in Texas. Abilene Christian's the sixth best team against in the nation against the spread. Texas, Texas is about 500 against the spread. So I'm gonna go with Abilene Christian, who it's also a state rivalry a little bit for Abilene Christian, not for Texas. Texas is gonna be like Abilene who, and they're gonna see some disrespect with that. Wildcats get your head in the game, +9, taking them on the spread. They don't have to win, just cover. Don't have to win, just cover.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe my blinders are on with this one, Higgins. But I actually really like Texas in this spot. I just think, kind of what you were saying about the conference play, man. I do think that's going to be a factor. I guess not in every game. Like, I guess there are exceptions to the rule where a team in a smaller conference is just so exceptional, right? Like Gonzaga, right?
Yes.
But Abilene Christian, they're not Gonzaga yet. So I think Texas in this one. I also, just to preview a little something here, Higgins, Texas in my Final Four. Now they're not beating Gonzaga or anything like that, but they're there. Hey, they saying, "Hey, what's up? We're here."
They're they're saying hi a little bit. They're waving.
Yeah, they're here. They get to make the trip from Indy to Indy.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's my last pick for Saturday, Brett, and that's one of the last games of the night. It's not the last game of the night, though, is it?
No, but I'm on another game in the East before I get to the last game in the
Oh,
night,
I'm sorry.
Higgins.
I jumped you with. Yeah, I did jump you.
All
I'm sorry.
good, all good. I'm taking my first small conference guy here. Saint Bonaventure takes on LSU, and the Bonnies win the A10 tournament, win the A10 outright, and get disrespected in the 8-9 game. That is brutal, Higgins. 1.5 point dogs plus 106 on the money line, Higgins. I'm not having that disrespect. I'm rolling with Woj. I'm rolling with the Bonnies plus 106 on the money line.
Okay, on the money line. I've been sticking with the spread, trying to find some value with those early lines there. You're confident. You're betting on one of your bracket upsets, aren't you? A little bit. Uh,
A little bit. I think the Bonnies are, they're one of these Houstons. They're one of these Gonzagas. They're an elite team from a conference that may not be the SEC, the ACC, the Big Ten, the Big 12. But
the
they're
A10
good,
does have its
Higgins.
years, though.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're a good team. The St. Bonaventure's Bonnies are really good this year. And then we'll finally get to the late game, Higgins. The last game of the week or of the first round, Ohio versus Virginia. Virginia's had tons of COVID issues, Higgins. I'm taking Ohio +7. I'm taking Ohio plus 280 on the money line. Ohio can score. Ohio's a really fun team to watch out of the MAC. Plus, I have a good friend on the coaching staff there, so I am rooting for Ohio personally. So again, a little bias. Take that into your handicap here, but I'm all in on Ohio against Virginia with the COVID issues.
Ohio averages over 80 points per game, and Virginia is typically known to slow the game down and all of that, which I guess they did start doing a little more later in the season, but this Virginia team is not their normal team at all. It's not their normal standard of defense or any of that. So I do kind of like your reasoning for this pick, even though I don't necessarily agree with it. I did take Virginia in the first round of the bracket, but it is not a normal Virginia year. You are right. They aren't going to go as far as they typically do sometimes. I think this
Yeah,
is going to be an early out for them
I
this
mean,
year.
it's just a tough circumstances for Virginia with the late arrival to Indianapolis. They're not going to have the opportunity to practice there. So this screams Ohio to me, Higgins. You know, different year, different circumstances. Virginia could probably get Ohio, but unfortunately, Virginia got hit with the COVID bug as the conference tournaments were wrapping up. They beat Syracuse, then didn't get to play their next game against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech ends up going on and winning the ACC championship. So uh, just a crazy year for some teams, and unfortunately, it's going to really hurt Virginia here, I think.
Absolutely. Now, Brett, it's interesting that we've talked so much about March Madness right now, though, because our Moneyline Magic, the man in this Moneyline Magic, never made it to the dance, actually, in his college career, right? Damian Lillard, for all that he is known for doing, he did not make it to the dance.
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable, but he was a good player in college, Higgins, no doubt about it. People knew about him. I mean, he was sixth overall pick, so he wasn't hiding.
Absolutely. I mean, it was just he went to one of those mid majors that he didn't get respected with another bid just beyond their automatic qualifier, unfortunately. So, unfortunately, he did not make it, even though he did play all 4 years, too.
Yeah, Weber State great, Damian Lillard, Higgins.
Let's get into the Moneyline Magic, though, Brett. Talk about a or a Tuesday night thriller on the court where the Trailblazers were trailing for basically this entire game. They had a lead in the very beginning, but they lost it when it was tied 10-10, and they didn't catch up until the fourth quarter, and it's basically because of Lillard, right?
I mean, you can certainly say that, Higgins. Uh, he had 20 fourth quarter points leading
Whew.
this comeback, Higgins. They were down 17 at one point in the second half, but they were able to come all the way back and defend home court. CJ McCollum made his return in this one, but you wouldn't have known it because it was Dame time all the time.
It is Dame time all the time. I mean, 50 bomb. He dropped 50, had 10 assists, 6 rebounds. He went 18 for 18 from the free throw line, including the final 4 that he hit near the end of the game to win the game 125 to 124. That's also why it's a money line magic. They needed every bit of those 50 points from Damian Lillard. 18 for 18 on the night from the free throw line.
Hey, Dame, they could have used 51, man. A little breathing room. Come on.
Charity stripe. Can't give a man like him, James Harden, Kyrie, even, you can't give some of these guys those shots at the line. They make them.
Yeah, I mean, 50 is an impressive number, Higgins. That's a great number. So anytime you hit that and get the win, it's a hell of a night. When you do it in a fourth quarter comeback, you get money line magic too.
He only missed 7 shots on the night, all from beyond the arc, but he still went 6 for 13 from beyond the arc.
Somebody check those nets. I think there's a hole in the net. He definitely ripped some nylon.
Those shoes were on fire, probably.
Gotta be the shoes.
Today's episode is presented by Podgo. Podgo is the easiest way for you to monetize your podcast, providing podcasters with a flat rate for ad space so you always know how much you get when you include an ad from Podgo. Apply today to become a member and immediately be connected with advertisers that fit your audience. That's podgo.co at podgo.co. And be sure to add our podcast, The Next Best Bet, in the How Did You Hear About Podgo section of the application. Now, Brett, we do have some NBA and NHL picks that we're making on Thursday night games, but let's be honest, most of the bankroll, at least this weekend, is going to be focused on that March Madness that we just spent a while talking about, right?
Definitely Higgins. I mean, I'm taking one here that's more of a gut feel. I don't know what your plays are.
So I have one NBA pick, Hornets versus Lakers. My pick in the NBA, Brett, is going to be the Lakers -8 over the Hornets. Now, the Hornets have a back to back on the road. They're playing on Wednesday night in Denver. And as we're recording this right now, Brett, they're down by 27 in the fourth quarter with about 8 minutes left to play. Charlotte's just not played well. They still have to travel. The Lakers have been playing rather well recently. They've covered four straight since coming back from the All-Star break. They're on a little bit of a run. So -8 against a team that's on a back-to-back and not even in the city yet as we're recording this podcast. I like those odds.
Yeah, the travel back to back is a tough thing, Higgins, and to go to LA, those guys might be excited to get to LA. Roscoe's chicken is fantastic, Higgins. Not sure if you've ever had it, but
I have not.
fantastic. Open till 2 a.m. So sometimes you land and you go and you get some chicken and waffles. It's delicious. That's a little tip. That's an NBA travel tip. But
Well,
yeah,
speaking about the NBA travel tip, I guess as all of this is going on with March Madness right now, how much have you seen them ever pay attention to that for these years or these days right here? Like, how interested are they into this?
Oh, well, I mean, the guys are definitely paying attention to March Madness. Guys bet in the NBA on their alma maters, not like with sports books, like with each other, right? So, like, Cuse is playing North Carolina, and I'm working with a coach or something, North Carolina. We'll have a, $25, $50 wager or something on it, or candy bar, a dinner or something. And that's kind of how bets go. But,
It's definitely
uh,
on their radar, at least,
it's
though.
it's on their radar. You know how your college program's doing for sure.
Absolutely, still a sense of pride there. I would imagine so, and I'd be interested to see how that is as you're traveling from game to game if you're on a travel spree, or if you're at home and you get to go and tune in and watch the games a little bit more. I'd sure prefer to be on a home break personally.
Yeah, I mean it's at the same point it's fun. You just all get together on the road, and maybe you go to someone's room in this case when during a COVID year like this, and you watch the games. It's a fun get to ground gathering moment.
Absolutely. Now, Brett, are you on any of the NBA on Thursday night though, or are you saving your bankroll for the college basketball?
I'm pretty much saving my bankroll for the college hoops, but I did mention that I had one gut feel I kind of like. It's not in the NBA, Higgins. It's on the ice in the NHL. Penguins take on the Devils. Devils not very good. Penguins pretty good. Penguins minus a goal and a half, plus 145 juice there. So it's in my favor, Higgins. I'll take a good team against a not very good team and just hope for an empty netter there at plus 145.
That's very fair. The Penguins haven't really been getting those breaks on the road this year, though, against the spread at least. They're better at home, but not on the road. Devils, about this as you would expect, a little bit better at home, not great on the road. I like the reasoning, though. Not bad value at plus 145. I found an NHL pick as well, kind of with similar value. I have the Hurricanes a goal and a half at plus 130 over the Blue Jackets. And I like the Hurricanes at home as -1.5 puck line favorites because at home they've actually played rather well. They're 7-4 against the spread, whereas you look at the Blue Jackets on the road against the spread, they're losing 4-8. one of every three they're winning on the road against the spread. So I'm expecting the Hurricanes, who have done okay this year, Blue Jackets, done okay this year. Each of them, I expect the home team's gonna get their puck line break. I think.
Fair enough. Let's get into our Levy Lock pick of the pod, Higgins. We've been hot.
Are we both risking our brackets slash our pride in March Madness on our pick of the pods and Levy locks?
I don't know, Higgins. I mean, that's a lot to risk. I don't know if I want to risk all that, but I'll tell you what. I'm proving I'm going all in on Colorado, Higgins, for my Levy lock. I'm going to take Colorado minus 5.5. I think the Georgetown run was a lot of fun in the Big East tournament. I think it's a great story. I think it's something they can build on for next year. But I think they're running into a well coached team with a great guard in McKinley Wright. And Colorado's going to be a little too much for the Hoyas in this one. Minus 5.5. Give me the Buffaloes.
All right, like I said, my bracket doesn't agree with you there, so I hope you're wrong. Maybe this is where I'll get our one pick gap. You have a one pick lead on me so far in 2021. I'm also putting my bracket on the line a little bit. Taking Arkansas minus 8.5 over Colgate, and kind of like what I said earlier, I think that this is just a difference in quality in terms of the conferences that we're talking about. We're talking about the SEC, which has been rather competitive this year, minus Kentucky, who had a surprise down year, against a Patriot League that really this year there wasn't a lot of competition for Colgate. Their one loss was to Army, and overall it was rather lackluster. They only played 15 games. I'm taking the more experienced, tougher competition Arkansas minus 8.5.
All right. Well, fair enough. I can't wait for the March Madness to start, Higgins. I'm so excited.
Absolutely. Make sure to join our bracket challenge, by the way. That's a bit.ly link, and then afterwards it's just backslash NBB underscore bracket challenge. Join us. We have 11 in there already, and who knows? If you beat both of us or one of us, maybe we'll let you come onto the podcast. Who knows? Talk to us. See, who knows? It's March Madness. Anything could happen. This has been episode 125 of The Next Best Bet. For Brett, I'm Jake. We'll talk to you again after the weekend. March Madness, baby. Woo!